interrupted. Burn the box.
A small boy in war-torn, conflict-ridden Northern Ireland was asked, "What are you going to do about this? Do you want revenge?" He said, "Yes, I do." They said, "What form will your revenge take?" He said, "I want to make my life worthwhile." We all make up our decisions as to what we're going to do, and we all find whether we're playing central or incidental parts, certainly as I as a performer do. If you want an image of time, my father fixed Nelson Mandela's watch. This was before the prison sentence. It was on that watch that he counted out the seconds, minutes, hours, years, and decades. One of my colleagues at Star Lab said, "No wonder the revolution took so long." Come back with me 10 years to the late 1990s. I'm sitting in a curry joint. I've got a lager in my hand, and I look up. There's a guy who looks a little like me. I go, "Oh no, not him again." It's a portrait by Sir Joshua Reynolds of Lawrence Sterne. It was done 200 years ago, but then, of course, 100 years means nothing. That man wrote a great book about digression. And next to that portrait is, no, please don't. I'll do that when thank you. Can you go back? Thank you. So this guy was next to him, and his name is Jonathan Swift. He was a near contemporary of Lawrence Sterne. At the time that I saw these portraits, I was rehearsing the part of Gulliver. And it was a modern dress production in which we went to places called Laputa, and there were characters invented by Swift called the Yahoos. Jonathan Swift said, "When true genius appears in the world, you may know it by this sign, that the dunces are all in a confederacy against it." Now, you may think that this is the Star Lab story. I'm not going to go that far because you're all complexity junkies. You're all people who like your stories naughty, and I've only got 17 minutes. It seems very churlish to complain about that, obviously, because, you know, you've got this new president of the European Union. He writes haiku. How can you complain about 17 minutes when the guy says so much in 17 syllables? So I'm on the phone. I finish that call, and another call comes through, and it's from a guy called Walter de Brouwer. Now, people have told me about Walter de Brouwer. Walter de Brouwer does these tremendous productions all over. He comes from Rotterdam. No, he doesn't. He comes from Marrakesh. He does these things where does flying wardrobes and people with flapping genitals and crashing in. He's a theater producer. Hello, Jack. Yeah, this is Walter de Brouwer here. Oh, yeah, great. Oh, hi, yeah, Walter. Yeah, I've been waiting for your call, actually. I've been trying to get hold of you. Yeah, well, Jack, so I was wondering if you could come to Brussels. Pardon my language. So, yeah, okay, yeah. So what, you want me to perform? Perform? Yeah, perform. You perform? Yes, I perform. Oh, okay. No, Jack, you see, I wondered, you see, I got your book and I thought you really compressed it. Well, actually, this professor at Imperial said it was under 100 pages of well-compressed bullshit. Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I mean, of course, I like also that you talk about Brussels in the Metropole Hotel, but you managed to kind of, yeah, I sort of spinached the science down. Yeah, spinach, I like that, yeah, spinach, yeah. Yeah, it's a sort of like, it's like a maple syrup, you know, I distilled it. Yeah, exactly, yeah, you see, already you are useful to us. You see, Jack, you see, I run a lab, and I was hoping that you would come to us. I understand you work at Princeton. You were a professor. No, only in the sense that I profess. I'm not really a professor. No, but anyway, I think we need a professor of the public understanding of science. No, but you can't. It's ridiculous. I know nothing about science. I mean, my science teachers at school, you could compare them to offal. Honestly, no, don't worry, Jack. Everyone is faking it. So, Jack, let me speak to you. I want to try and encourage you to come because, you know, what we have here, I'm trying to get to this lab. I'm trying to get all the great geniuses of the whole world. No, wait, well, hold on. No, I don't mean you. No, you will be the one who knows nothing. But I want to try and build up a thing with multidisciplinarity. You see, at universities and schools, people always stick to their own subject. We want to try and mix it. If you talk about habitable worlds, you want to talk about life elsewhere, obviously you should have a cousin who has the phone number of someone who does life sciences. You must understand. Have I lost sound? Can you still hear me? What? You can still, thank you very much. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, even Mark Millis can hear me. That's important. We want to do multidisciplinarity, and also we want to think very long term. We want to combat the pathologically short attention span of people in this world. We want to have gardens, we want to have slow meals, and very nice wine, actually. You wouldn't have a Chablis like this in Princeton. No. I mean, in America, if you drink wine at lunchtime, you're an alcoholic. In Europe, if you don't drink wine at lunchtime, you're an alcoholic. So, Jack, we think long term. I have sponsored a clock. It's a millennium clock. It will only make any noise after 10 years. It will only strike after 100 years, and it's only after 1,000 years that out comes the cuckoo. So tell me, can you start on Tuesday? Well, I happen to be in Princeton. I'm teaching there. I'm on one of these. And I'm saying, I burn the box. I didn't even recognize the box. And one of my students said, you're sitting on it. And then I go and see Freeman Dyson. It was one of his ideas that we should think long term. Walter's been talking about him. He says, I think you should go to this lab. You have a sense of wonder. You're a storyteller. And you don't have a theory to protect. And he turns, and above him there's a bust of Einstein. And up against the bust of Einstein, there is a tattered notebook. It's as if he's trying to get the brilliant ideas from this great head into his notebook. And that's why I went to Star Lab. And when I arrived there, it's not a lab. It doesn't have Frankensteinian bubbly stuff. It has, people at workstations. Most of them look as if they've been shot in through the screens. And pretty soon I realize, I see Ed and Jack, and Ed says to Jack, he's Polish, he says, I really need the protein, I've been looking for it for 2 years. And Ed says, I think I've got it. 2 years? What do you mean 2 years? Boop. And Ed's sitting there, and Jack's sitting there, and Ed has it on his screen within seconds. There's a guy called Chris van den Broek. He's trying to get energy from grooves. What's he going to use for grooves? What's he going to use for grooves? At 2 o'clock in the morning, he finds that he can use a CD. One of the lab guys got a frog. And the frog said, I will live with you if you just kiss me. I will look after you. I will be just like someone in Thailand. You will have a lovely life with me. Just kiss me and I will be your woman. And he puts it in his pocket and doesn't do anything. And after a long time she says, why don't you kiss me? I'd be so wonderful for you. And he said, look, I'm a scientist. I don't really have time for a woman. But a talking frog, that's cool. So these were all in one email, just about 10 months, 11 months after I was there. Those are the subjects that we were just kind of talking about at that time. All serious subjects, all fields of study. I mean, gene analysis using saliva, all that, subatomic particles, electric brain building, and so on. I never dined alone at this place. These are the kind of things we talked about. Batteries, why we sleep and dream. Space smells of cordite. Somebody told me, look at this. He said he had a scanning, probing microscope. He said, look at that. He said, this is an atom. I said, looks like a waffle. Somebody else said the genes look like snot, and so on. And then we also talked about the end of death. I mean, imagine that. I mean, how different is it going to be to all of us? The Greek storytellers say to expect someone to live forever as a flower to bloom forever is an insult to the flower, and also the dangers, but I was thinking of the good side, the dear ones that I miss, maybe they'd come back. Yes, I can go on. At this time, just about this time, my daughter's on the phone to me. She's about 4 years old, and she says, Daddy, what are you doing? What time is it there? She starts talking to me. Suddenly she's saying, Daddy, you can't be there. You can't be in Brussels. You can't leave us. Why aren't you living with us? And I understand that to a child, a week can be 100 years, and Daddy's away, and it takes me the whole weekend, so this is the relativity of time, and I speak to her, and I explain to her about the adventures and all this kind of thing, and eventually she understands. She has a sense of wonder that I've got to go, and also it really helps to have a lot of Belgian chocolate. These are the questions that we asked. We wanted to do a video, and so we asked these people to read in their own voices what remained to be discovered. So we had, how can we develop and discover technologies? It sounded wonderful in these different accents. Of course, we asked Sergey to do the last one, is space-time or continuum? We wanted this, but of course, Sergey didn't realize we wanted it read out. He thought we wanted him to address the question, so he sat down and immediately started to work on the problem. At the lab, we worked on bits, atoms, neurons, and genes, so that's bits. I go up to this guy, and we have wearable computers, you see, that we're trying to do with the computers will be woven into people's clothes, and I go up and I say, listen, I've had this letter from the Woman's Hour, the BBC, I've been working with the BBC, and they want to know about dry cleaning. He goes, what? Dry cleaning? I mean, can you dry clean these clothes? What are you talking about? Well, I mean, they say, well, dry cleaning? I mean, the level of questions that you bring me, I mean, honestly, spin drying, now that would be interesting. Then I start talking about the dangers, the surveillance, how difficult it would be to accept, as I had to do in South Africa when we were looked at by the police. I've traveled in Eastern Europe. I say we have to have privacy. We have to drive a course between, feeling good about this and it's okay, and hyperbole in which we overstress the dangers. There's one guy there who says, I am prophesying a giga-death war between those people who are in favor of computers and those who are against. And there's people who are gathered around, and I say, wait a second, you're still working in the field. I mean, people say that science is value-free, so's a gun. Why are you working in the field? And he says, don't you understand? These computers are marvelous. They're so impressive, and it's the prize. And somebody sitting at the table says, did you say prize or price? Richard Wheeler says we should write a novel together, and we create a character of a computer. You think you're so impressive, you human beings. You are all yogurty and organic. You love your imaginations, but I could get at your neurons and change everything. I could give you highs and lows and all sorts of ecstasies. I am so much more powerful than you as a matter of fact. I'm many millions of times more powerful than the miserable little God you dreamed. Is he serious? I mean, can we say... And I go around and I ask the computer guys, is this can we do this? Can we write this? And I go up to Ivo. Ivo's a bit like sort of a dark-haired, well, sort of a brownie-haired Kafka with his head on one side. I go up to him and say, Ivo, our computer's going to take over. And he says, I can't see why they would bother. It's around this time that I go to Saudi Arabia to do my trilogy about male-female relationships. I do a lot about male-female relationships. Oh, honey, oh, darling. What the hell is that? Oh, sorry, my cat's got something in its throat, and that sort of thing. People say to me, why are you interested in science, in the relationships of all things, when you do all that wonderful, funny stuff about relationships? After one of the shows in Saudi Arabia, a man comes up to me and he says, I have something wrong with my testicles. I say, thank you for sharing. He says, what I'm trying to, and he explains to me that he was very moved by the fact that we had a child. My second child was born through IVF, through the intrusion of science. And how do you know when the soul is ready to be born? So I say, well, let's have a look. Let's see. What is there in the lab about God? Instead of bits, atoms, neurons, and genes, I thought of days. I thought that we should actually look at the combination of neurons and genes, because obviously neurons are cells. And I thought that we should also talk about days. After all, in a place where 100 years meant nothing, we should understand time. Sergey's already talked about going back to meet their former self. When he said, we'll meet our former self, we didn't talk about killing them. Richard went up to him and said, if I meet my former self, can I, instead of killing him, can I just give him a good slapping? Julian Barber stood in front of us and said, the time didn't exist. He said, ladies and gentlemen, and explained that there is a movement that we all experience, but we actually smooth it out in our minds. So he stood before us and said, ladies and gentlemen, time doesn't exist. It is just distance traveled. Ladies and gentlemen, this doesn't exist. He meant that we just smooth this image out. And as he said, this doesn't exist, more or less at that instant, the lab went bankrupt. I told you we had to have, I told you that we had to have a story, that I was a storyteller, and I told you that we had to have digressions. Well, at this time, I want to tell you, those of you who are suffering from the recession, bankruptcy happened, people came in, we were told we had a half an hour to go. And we managed, and we survived, some better than others. And at the end of it, I mean, apart from the people who went to the Brussels labor exchange and had to approach different people, one of them said, they were asked, you know, what jobs do you do? And one of them said, well, actually, I work in architecture, but I don't use walls. Another one said, I work with spit. One person said, well, I build brains, and so on. So it was quite difficult for the Brussels labor exchange to sort this out. But in the end, apart from one person, we all made it. Even Andre managed. Can I just finish off? I'm really, really there, nearly there. Thank you so much. In the end, Andre Zarour was supposed to be on the plane that was going from Newark to San Francisco. And Isabelle Bouon was killed in a motor accident. When I wrote her biography for the online information about Starlab, she said, life is so fleeting. Life is so fragile. One final memory. Walter de Brouwer standing in front of us saying, well, ladies and gentlemen, you're all intelligent people. 3 to 1, it's blown up in my face. I feel I should just sit in a fridge to cool myself down. But you will all do well. And one interesting thing, the women here, most of them, business and science, are pregnant. Let us hope that their future and your futures are worthwhile. And where is Jack? Jack will tell the story.